Clyde, let me bring you in here. We're now stage 6 for 3 days. Tomorrow will be the 4th day. A couple of days ago, Eskom and the Minister of Public Enterprises speaking very much wanting to allay the fears of South Africans and give us a sense that, you know, the situation is under control. It doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, I think Eskom have known for some time now what's actually coming, and I think it's not that they haven't wanted to tell us, but it's been. In fact, I was on Stephen's show 3 days ago, or on Monday, I think it was, and I actually said it looks like we're heading for stage 4 plus on a semi-continuous basis, and I hate to have been proven correct, as it were. The one good thing I think at the moment is that the severity of the load shedding, some of it now is attributed to labour action. And that means if we can sort that labour action out, we can ratchet back to a lower level of load shedding. It's not all labour action, because we had load shedding before the labour action, but at least it's something tangible. So I actually would like to speak on behalf of concerned citizens of South Africa and call on the workers and the unions to actually put South Africa first and to actually build a bridge to the future. You know, there used to be boatmen on the Thames River that used to row people across the river. And when they were wanting to build bridges, the boat people would stop the building of those bridges. The workers and the unions need to build those bridges to the future instead of stopping building the bridges. And we know no one's heard of those boatmen anymore. They're redundant now. And the workers have an opportunity to actually lead us into a future of electricity plentifulness, and that's what I'm calling for.
Clyde, it's obviously a topic that's making you quite emotional. Tell me why.
I've worked with communities in Mpumalanga who live in the plume of they can't get jobs on the coal mines or the coal-fired plants because they can't pass the medical examinations. So most of the workers in Mpumalanga didn't grow up in Mpumalanga. The people who grew up there can't get the jobs because of the quality of the quality of the air. And it just, I've never heard anything more sad.
David, let me bring you in here, because the other challenge that we're facing is that it's not just about the lives of South Africans that are being affected. It's also the impact that this is having on the state of the economy.
Yeah. Spot on. So I would distill it by saying Eskom is the largest single systemic risk that we face as a nation. And it's a risk in terms of our economy. It's a social risk, which Clive has just spoken about now. And it's also a political risk. The ramifications of this organization not functioning as it needs to function are massive. And there's a huge economic, there's a huge people and social cost, and there's probably going to be political ramifications that stem from this as well.
Despite what you're saying, David, outside of the Public Enterprises Minister, again 3 days ago, we haven't really heard from government. One doesn't get a sense that there is any state of crisis.
So I think we need to take a step back here and actually be quite pragmatic. So we've been getting ourselves to this situation since perhaps around 2006, 2007, possibly even earlier than that. 2007 was when the former President Mbeki, said the government had made a mistake with Eskom. What my sense is the people who are meant to be in charge, the people who are meant to be in control, actually themselves now realize they're not in control. And we've been to some extent complacent, saying we've got problems in Eskom, they've got significant ramifications, but the people who are in charge are in control. The reality we're now observing as even they have limited control over events relating to Eskom.
Of course, there's the one-hand control in as far as the administrative affairs of Eskom are concerned, but also there's now the issue of the labor challenges that have arisen, and the union saying, well, we're not entirely in control of our members. So how does one then solve the situation? Because the issue of Eskom workers being disgruntled has been growing for some time. So it's not surprising that we have ended up where we are today.
Yeah. So I'm going to put a time lens on this particular challenge. Short term, I'm going to put medium term, I'm going to put a longer term challenge. The short-term challenge is obviously getting everybody who works at Eskom back to work, as much as possible, stabilizing the system in a very, very difficult environment. So that's the short-term challenge that I think all the principals are working towards. Maybe we can move from level 6 to level 4 or level 3. That's the shorter-term one. But the medium and the long-term challenge is structural and it is rigid. Where are we as a nation going to be from an electricity generation, transmission, distribution perspective in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? And that is really a question that hasn't been answered. Absolutely, there have been interventions encouraging renewable energy, but our ability to imagine a future electricity infrastructure in a modern, progressive world which takes into account all our challenges with regards to global warming. We haven't done that sufficiently yet. So what the principals have to do is deal with the short-term issue, which is now, which is immediate, which is costing us as a nation an incredible amount of money, and it's having a huge human impact. But also think about and reimagine the next 5 to 10 years.
Let me bring in Photovoltaic Industry Association board member Daniel Goldstuck, still on this issue of load shedding. Daniel, good evening to you. You know, from the perspective of your industry, of course, alternative energy is something that has long been spoken about. But interestingly enough, on a week like this, we're hearing more and more voices that says, not so quick on the alternative energy if we don't even have our base load supply right.
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to your viewers. I hope the irony is not lost on your viewers that I am in fact being load shed at this moment while on air. The technology is there, fundamentally, just full stop. The technology is there to solve this problem. It exists at scale, and it can be developed and built at scale and pace. A 100 megawatt solar PV plant can take 15 months to build. It can take a year to permit. So if you add that together, you're looking at 24 to 36 months to door-to-door to have a solar power plant producing energy. Coupled with that, battery storage, the prices have come down, although presently quite volatile, the lithium-ion prices. But the technology is there to stabilize the grid. Baseload is coming offline. You need a solution. You need a gap. Yeah, it's something that fills the gap, and solar storage and wind can fill that gap.
Daniel, unfortunately, the line to you isn't that great. I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Clyde, you know, I think South Africans we want a solution to where we are today, and something tangible that as a nation we can believe in and we can all get behind. Why is it that you think we haven't been able to get to that point, despite what Eskom, what the Public Enterprises Minister is saying?
I think we haven't been given the opportunity to imagine how good the future can be with regard to electricity. So in order to decarbonize, we're going to have to produce 3 times as much electricity as we currently consume. Now, I wanted to say that's 3 Escoms, but maybe it's 5 Escoms to produce it, if you see. We're actually going to have to produce more. So I have no idea what the problem is with the workers and the unions. We're going to need them to rally together in to enable us to produce 3 times as much electricity as we currently produce. And that's what we're going to need, because we're going to have to electrify everything, our transport sector, our heavy industry sector, and our current electrical sector. So that's the good bit, is it's going to require a huge effort to do that. But if we can do that, we will have surplus electricity as well to start doing things like desalinating water for Makhovah and as I say, moving into e-mobility. So there's actually a great future, and I would like to see us move into that future and at the same time get to a position where we can democratize the ownership of that new fleet. So I have a model where millions, tens of millions of South Africa, each own a chunk in that new fleet. And so that's part of the problem, is certain people don't want to see democratization, because then there's a loss of central control and pulling of the strings.
When we look at what government policy has been and is around energy through the Integrated Resource Plan,
yes,
it really is about a diverse mix of energy from different and from multiple sources, really.
Yeah, I like to think of that back to those boatmen on the Thames River. We had a diverse mix of boats, small boats, big boats, and they were all obsolete. The technologies that we currently use are technologies of the last century. We are going to move, because we talk about net zero or zero by 2050. So whichever way we look at it, we will be completely renewable at some point in the future. And the question then is, when will that be in the future? Because it will happen. And the faster it happens...
Well, what we know is that government doesn't want it to be right now.
Well, yeah, but
because of the threats that they see to the industry.
Well, perhaps, but the faster it happens, the better it will be for us. I mean, the one figure that sticks in my head is if we take the cost of electricity and the cost of pollution of burning fossil fuels in not just electricity, but in the transport sectors, and the climate change impacts that we have from it, we can produce electricity in the future at 1/10 of the cost of business as usual energy. 1/10. If we factor in properly the health costs, the climate costs, and the fact that when you burn stuff, 2/3 of that energy goes up in smoke and is wasted as heat. So when you burn 100 units of energy from coal or from petrol, you're lucky if you get 30 units out in the form of electricity.
Right.
And that's thermodynamics.
Daniel, let me bring you in here. I mean, you know, Clyde is talking about reimagining what the energy future of this country can look like. Are we there? Are we at that point if we haven't even fulfilled the basics, such as doing what we had set out to do in the IRP?
Hi, Kathy. Yes, I believe we can leapfrog the existing infrastructure. I mean, we believe as an industry, we don't need to fix the coal-fired power plants or build new or build more. As I was saying previously, the technology is there to do this fundamental reimagining of the industry. The grid as it stands can absorb gigawatts of solar and wind. Studies have been done, extensive studies. Additionally, there is pump storage where electricity can be used, if excess power during the day from solar or wind can be used to pump water up mountains into reservoir, and that can run as peak supply power plants in the evenings with that water running down. Battery storage, as I was speaking about earlier, can be built in factories anywhere, even localized here in South Africa, to store excess power from solar and wind and balance the grid at will. The batteries respond instantaneously to demand fluctuations. So again, just reiterating, we can build solar and storage within 3 years, door to door, from starting the process to power injecting onto the grid. That's what it takes to build a 100-megawatt power plant.
All right. David, I'll wrap it up with you then tonight. Ultimately, you know, we can have all of these great ideas and even plans of what power in this country can look like. Tomorrow, you and I wake up, it's stage 6 the whole day. What's really the greatest risk that poses, especially to the economy?
So there are two things, and I think I'd just like to emphasize what my fellow presenters have spoken about. The opportunity to rectify our challenging situation is there. The state, though, is acting in a way that is almost fearful. Eskom has got 400 billion worth of debt on its balance sheet, and in order for us to transition and take advantage of all these new technologies, it's going to threaten how we address those particular challenges. So my response with regards to the opportunity that my colleague spoke about is that we've got to move a lot more quickly in decentralizing energy generation and energy transmission. And the technologies, the capabilities, the hardware, dare I say, the funding is available. But the conservatism we have, because we're trying to protect a legacy institution like Eskom, is preventing us from moving forward. That's got ramifications for businesses in terms of the ability to grow, to create jobs. That's got ramifications for us as a country in order to alleviate all the poverty challenges we've spoken about, and for people day to day like you and me being able to go to work and create jobs and to feed our families. The solutions are there and they're evident. What we need is the political will and the decisiveness to act on it.
Dr. David Makhovah, let me thank you for your time. David Goldstuck and Clyde Mallinson, thank you all for contributing to this conversation.